Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Mouses Makes Knitting podcast, where there is not a lot of knitting this week, I'm afraid, but I have an excuse and I will explain. There is some knitting, but there's not very much. So this is probably going to be quite a short video today. And I did think about not doing one, but then so many people say, oh, we don't mind if it's short or if there's not much knitting. We just like to visit with you. So, well, if you're not one of those people, I apologise. I'm doing it for them. And this is all related. So bear with me. It's a long story, but bear with me. I am aware that my hair is not looking its best. I washed it today. I washed it a little while. What is going on with this? That's unnecessary. What's going on there? Oh, I bet that's where I've had it on the hanger. I'm going to have to stop putting this on a hanger. Right, don't look at that. Don't be distracted by that. Stay on track. Okay, sorry. Yes, I washed my hair this morning, which I don't normally do on a day that I'm going to record because it takes a long time to dry. But I haven't washed it for a few days. I don't wash it very often anyway because it's a pain in the neck. But last time I washed it, I put a muscle in my upper back into spasm, which meant that knitting has been very, very uncomfortable. And in fact, by the end of that day, my whole back was in spasm and I didn't know what to do with myself. And it started the week before. I fell asleep in this chair. I wanted to sit in the sun, but it wasn't warm enough in the garden, and I have to cover up and wear a big hat and sit in the shade anyway. So I came up here and I sort of stretched out with the heat of the sun on me coming through the window and the blind and everything, and I was going to read, but I fell asleep. And as you can see, there is no headrest or anything in this chair, and so I won't show you the position I woke up in because I don't want to set it all off again. But suffice to say, my head fell back and sideways and it was in a very unnatural position when I woke up. And I thought then, I'm going to pay for this. And for a few days, getting into bed was really uncomfortable because your shoulders all do that, don't they? When I have to sleep on my side, and they do that. And I couldn't get my head comfortable. It didn't matter what I did with pillows. It was just all, not very nice. Until this morning when I washed my hair and it just all went ning, and I couldn't move. And all I'd done was I comb conditioner through my hair, and I'd lifted my arm and turned my head at the same time, and that was it. It just went, nope, not doing that anymore. And Dave was running Ewan to work because Dave had last week off. If you saw last week's podcast, you'd know that. And so I was stuck. I couldn't really wash properly. I couldn't really dry myself. I certainly couldn't get dressed until he got back. And then he helped sort me out. And then I went on Zoom and was pretty grumpy. In fact, I stayed pretty grumpy until yesterday. But anyway, my hair was really due a proper wash. So I washed it today. And because I had to come and do this, I couldn't let it air dry. There's too much of it. It's not warm enough. It doesn't look it, but when it's wet and sort of untwisted, it's waist length. It's a lot of hair, and I really need to get it cut, but I'm not allowed to cut it myself anymore because the hair police, otherwise known as Peter Minns, tells me I'm not allowed to cut my own hair anymore. And I can't really go to the hairdressers because leaving the house is like playing Russian roulette. So I'm just going to have to live with it. So I thought, well, I'm going to have to dry it with the hairdryer, which my hair does not like. But I put some sort of curl cream stuff in it, and I thought, well, if I just do it gently with the diffuser and, maybe it'll be all right. Could not find my diffuser. Couldn't find it anywhere. And so I just did my best blow drying it without the diffuser, and it just goes. And the only way to deal with it when it's in that mood is to twist it into sort of ringlets while it calms down. Otherwise, I look like Kate Bush after she's been through a particularly violent tornado. And of course, the minute I'd finished messing about with it, I looked at the other end of my dressing table. We're not talking a vast distance here, 2.5, 3 feet, and there was the diffuser attachment. I did man looking this morning. I'm ashamed of myself. In my defence, I didn't have my glasses on, but it is just like a big black bowl thing. It's not hard to see, really. Although there is quite a bit of clutter on my dressing table at the moment that I ought to tidy up. But anyway. So that, along with some other stuff that's not really my story to tell, is the reason that I haven't done a great deal of knitting this week. So I'm going to show you what I've got. And as I say, this is probably going to be a very short podcast. Sorry. Sorry, I've opened the blind because it's sunny, but the sun hasn't come round yet. And I'll show you the garden at the end, actually, because Dave took last week off mainly to get rid of one of our sheds. One of our sheds was only ever going to be temporary while he built his workshop. And then it was destined for Peter to use. But of course, in the 3 years it took him to build his workshop, it was just literally rammed. There was not a spare square inch of space in there. So it's taken him all week to sort through it and do dump runs with stuff that he didn't want, find places for stuff that he did want, sort out his other shed, which used to be his workshop, to be the gardening tools, and I don't know what he's put in there. There's a big spider lives in there, so I'm not even going to go and investigate. But yeah, whatever man stuff he was doing. Look, I've got water here because I know this happens. Sorry, that was a bit noisy. So we're now rid of the shed and the garden is looking a lot better. It still needs a fair bit of after winter tidying up to do. And I see, to my deep joy, that the convolvulus or bindweed, whatever you call it, is already coming back. That means I'm going to spend all summer going round and pulling things out again. It drives me mad. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a rant now. I'm not a gardener. I like to sit in it and I like to look at the flowers. But mostly everything I touch dies, apart from roses. I can grow roses, I think because they just like being treated harshly. Everything I touch dies apart from the convolvulus. Will not die. And calm. I forgot entirely where I was going with all of that. But anyway, I'll show you the garden because you've seen it a couple of times before with shed. I'll show it to you without shed. Oh, Poppy's trying to join us, but she's trying to join us from outside. Let me see if I can show you. Sorry, I hope I don't make you feel ill. I don't know if you can see her. That may have been a minute or two of you just looking at a roof because I couldn't see the screen. She's not getting in this window. I'm not opening the window for her. She's a bad cat. Anyway, shall I show you some knitting now? I'm going to start with this one. This is my Flax Light, which I'm knitting for the Tin Can Knits knit along that Karen from A Yarn Tale is running. I said last week I was going to go back and put the neckband on, and I have done. I did that, and I've got this far. There's still a little way to go before I can divide for the sleeves. It doesn't look like I've done much, because where the marker is where I was last week, so I've done that much. I sat out in the garden with it a couple of times, but I particularly wanted to get my other jumper a bit further along. I'll show that to you in a minute. So this, you may remember, if you've seen this before, well, you will have seen it before, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, I've just realised I'm advertising. Anyway, this is being knit in some yarn by a company whose name completely escapes me. Now, I haven't got a ball of it here. This is very badly planned today. I am so sorry. A viewer last week did have a look and found it on the internet, but you can't get this colourway anymore. So it's probably a material what it's made of, isn't it? Originally I bought this on eBay in somebody's D-stash. I'm going to say maybe even 3 or 4 years ago, with a view to making a blanket. But I've got 500 grams of it, which isn't really enough for a blanket. I suppose I could have done a lap blanket, but it was going to be crocheted, and that uses up more yarn, doesn't it? So yeah, it wasn't going to happen. And I didn't really know what to do with it, and then I thought, Flax Light, perfect. So Flax Light it is. Hopefully next time you see this I will have split for the sleeves, and yeah, that's probably about as far as I'm going to get with it. Oh gosh, and I've trailed yarn everywhere because the little ball's fallen off. So that was that one. The other one, and this is the one that I really wanted to get a bit further ahead with, is this one. And this is, where are we? Anasha by Jennifer Steingast. And Anasha, it says here, is the native Alaskan Ayak people's word for wildflower. I just call it my wildflower sweater. It's a lot easier. So I have actually managed to split for the sleeves. And further to a comment from, I think it was Doris last week. Look, Doris, I put needle stops on. She said, why doesn't anybody use them? None of you podcasters use them. So I've put them on. I did actually need them today. But just to please you, Doris, we have needle stops. So I have split for the sleeves. I did make a bit of a mistake. Hopefully you can no longer see it, but somewhere on this row somewhere, I think it was that one, about a quarter of the way round the row, I started putting my Colourwork stitches in a different place. And I was on an evening Zoom. It must have been Monday evening. Yes, it was. And I was quite grouchy to begin with. I had a really not very good weekend one way and another. And yeah, then I saw that I'd made this mistake, which is really what happens when you're tired and you're grumpy and you're in pain and you can't concentrate on what you're doing. You didn't really ought to be doing something complicated. So I just carried on knitting. I saw I'd done it. I knew I could fix it, but I wasn't in the right place to fix it at the time. So I just carried on knitting. And the next morning, I did, it was 4 stitches out of each motif, and I'd done about 3/4 of the row like that. So it took me an hour and 20 minutes to do the row with my trusty tiny crochet hook, knitting up to each incorrect stitch, laddering it down, fixing it, moving on to the next one. But it's done, and I don't think you can tell. If you look on the inside, you can tell, because that must have been the correct bit. Where I normally catch my floats with every stitch, you can see that in some places where I went back and corrected it, I've not caught my floats. It is possible to do them as you're correcting the stitch, and on some stitches I did, but on other stitches I just couldn't be bothered. But I mean, that's a float across 2 stitches. It's perfectly acceptable. It's just not the way I normally do it. So that was that little mistake. Then there was another little mistake. I can't count, apparently. This has always been an issue. Hello, Pops. Hello. Do you want to come and see? Come and see then. Oh, sorry. Poppy has arrived, and Her Majesty wishes to get on the windowsill. And as I'm already in trouble for not letting her in the window, here she is. I had better. You want me to move my water as well? Really? You're very demanding. I have relined her basket. You say hello? You have to look in the camera. You can't look underneath it. Poppy. Pops. She's like one of those celebrities that say they don't like the fame and then caught the paparazzi. Yes, you're a good girl. I don't know if you can hear her purring. I'm just going to have a little sip of water. So, yes, counting. I have dyscalculia. It's like dyslexia, but with numbers. And I do sometimes struggle with counting my stitches. And I thought I'd better just, I've ringed the size that I'm making. I thought I'd better just count and check that I have got the right number of stitches. And I counted them, and I had 379, which was the size below the size that I was making. I should have had 400 stitches. And I thought, well, that's only 1 stitch off the size below. Perhaps I cast on the size below. But everything's working out pattern-wise, so it must be correct. Didn't count them again. And then when I came to divide for the sleeves, I divided as if I was making the size below. And then I counted and double checked each section, and my back has 14 stitches more than it should have, because I had miscounted and I had got 400 stitches. She's gone again. That's what the earthquake was. And I'm in 2 minds whether to do anything about it. I'm 14 stitches. At the moment, I'm thinking I just won't bother. It might be a bit of a swing back jumper. It's a design feature. What the heck? I'll see how I go. If it's really bothering me, and I don't think it will, I can always decrease over a few rows and get it back to, perhaps decrease when I get to sort of waist level. But I don't really think it's going to make that much difference, to be honest. So at the moment I'm just going with it, which, as I am generally a bit of a perfectionist, surprises me that I can do that. But I think, well, we'll see. We'll see. I could pull it back. This is me arguing with myself now. If I'm going to pull it back, I need to do it today because I've only done the separation for the sleeves in 1 or 2 rows. But I don't think I'm going to. No, I'm making the decision. I'm not going to. Right. I will shut up arguing with myself in front of you all. This is just making it longer when I said it was going to be short. So I'm really pleased with the pattern. I'm pleased that I went back and corrected the mistake. Oh gosh. Sorry, I'm attached. That's it. I think you can just see where the little purple Foxy is there. That's where I was last week. There's some short row shaping at the back, which I've added because I like doing German short rows. So it's not a great deal of progress over the 2 of them for the course of a whole week, but I did lose a whole day out of that week because I had a hospital appointment. I had to go and see my kidney consultant, and that's a 4-hour round trip plus the time that you're at the hospital, and he was running late, so we were there a bit longer than we normally would be, because when I got there for my appointment he wasn't actually there, he was wherever he was in the morning. So yeah, that took a whole day out of my knitting time. I did take Ewan's Musselburgh hat with me to knit, and I did a little bit on the motorway, but it was really warm in the car. It was the warmest day of the year so far, last Thursday, and we were shut in a car with no air conditioning, and on the motorway you can't really have the windows open, and my hands were just like sticky and I didn't really want to knit. And when we got to the hospital, I was desperate to spend a penny. I'm always desperate to spend a penny by the time we get to the hospital, because it is a 2-hour drive, and every time I make the same mistake. I think to myself, I won't drink much before we go, and then I won't need to go, and I still need to go. And not only do I need to go, but my mouth is so dry, I was so dehydrated that my tongue was sore and my lips were cracking. So I got told off for that while I was there, because I'm not supposed to get dehydrated. So it's but yeah, I was so desperate for the loo that Dave dropped me off at the door and went to park the car, and of course I didn't take my knitting. So I was sat in the waiting room with no knitting to do. So that didn't get worked on. Kidney function remains the same, just to give you a little update. Blood pressure is very high. He's threatening to put me back on the tablets that make my hair fall out if I can't just like chill out and get it down naturally. And events have not been conducive to me doing that, and that's all I'm going to say about that, because as I say, it's not my story to tell. So yeah, I've got 3 months probably to get my blood pressure down. Yeah, and that's about that really. Kidney function's about 48%, which is what it was last time, and that's okay. It's not dropped, so that's a good thing. I don't mind if it stays where it is. It'd be great if it went up a little bit, but that's unlikely. But I just don't want it to drop anymore, because I'm not going back on all those nasty tablets again. And really, the situation with germs, and I don't just mean COVID, I mean germs in general, means that being on immune suppression is really not a very good idea for anybody. So if I can avoid that, I'm going to. And I'm already about 18 months past the time he thought I was going to have to start dialysis as it is. So I'm touching wood. I'm having a good run. I don't want to spoil it with my blood pressure. Blood pressure, if you don't know, high blood pressure can upset your kidneys. It can hurt your kidneys. But your kidneys also help to control your blood pressure. So it's a bit of a vicious circle. I've just got to chill out. Take up yoga or something. I don't know. Anyway, I can't take up knitting, can I? Because that's clearly not working. The amount I knit and my blood pressure's still high. I forgot what I was going to say then. Never mind. If it comes back to me in time, I'll tell you. If not, it probably wasn't important. So, I remembered what it was. No, I do remember what it was. Sorry, it came and then it went again. I'm joining in with a new knit along that is being run by Kathy from Whot Knot and her daughter Mandy. Art by Mandy Meow on Instagram. I'll try and link them both below. They're in Australia, and obviously Australia is just going into its winter period now. So they're running a cardical, it's called, but it's very, very loose, whether you knit a cardigan or a sweater or a crop top, or, to be honest, so long as it goes on your upper body and isn't a scarf or a cowl, I think you're in. So I want to knit along with that, and I've been driving myself crazy trying to decide what to cast on. I've got a few cardigan patterns in my not very short list. There's also one that I've seen on Ravelry that I haven't got yet. It's a tin can knit one, and it's called Candy Shop or something. I can't remember. But it's Colourwork again. It's got a Colourwork yoke. That's really nice. Or I think I'm going to make either a ranunculus or a love note. I was going to get the yarn out to show you that I was going to use, but never mind. So I could use any of those things, but I'm not sure that I want to cast anything on before Tonya from Karma's a Stitch is having another cast on party on the 16th, and I'd really like to get the small stuff that I'm knitting off the needles, one of the shawls and the fingerless mitts, certainly, possibly the other shawl if I can, and get the 3 sweaters that I'm knitting as far along as I possibly can before I start casting on new stuff. And I've reduced down what I'm planning to cast on to 2 or 3 summer tops. So I'm wondering if what I could do is use my jewel spun sweater that I've only done about that much on, because whips are allowed, and it means that I'm not casting on something new. So yeah, that's been taking up way more time this week than it needs to, quite frankly. This actually is quite a good demonstration. People often say, I'm rambling now. People often say, oh, I don't know how you can cope with having so many projects on the needles. But this is a really good demonstration of what happens if you are podcasting and you don't. Before I was a podcaster, I was a monogamous knitter. I would knit one thing, start to finish, then cast on the next thing. And not even necessarily straight away. But if you're going to offer something as entertainment to people, it has to be a bit more interesting than, and this week I have knit the back, and this week I have knit the front, and this week I have done a sleeve. So you end up casting on, having the excuse, let me put it honestly, having the excuse to cast on a whole load of stuff so that you've got something interesting to show people. Because clearly this week I've only really worked on 2 sweaters, and that's not very interesting, and that's like 10 minutes of podcast time. Be all right for a vlog. Let me continue with my ramble. I am toying with the idea of doing Vlogmas this year, but I'm only toying with it. I don't know. I'm a little bit frightened of it because, well, I don't really do very much. So we'll see. And there's not much point me doing a weekly vlog because that's what this is really, isn't it? So we'll see. Yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out into the ether. Oh, my attention has been taken again by the cat's nemesis, little black cat as we call him. He's just gone along the fence at the bottom of the garden. This is little black cat, not the big black cat that had Poppy pinned in the flower bed the other day. Little black cat is quite nice. Yes, definitely rambling and nothing more to tell you. So I will try and link Whot Knot and the Mandy Meow, no, Art by Mandy Meow Instagram below, and the patterns, and I don't think I need to link anything else. Ah, yes, what I must tell you though is that next week is the podcast's 1st anniversary. I know, I'm surprised it's gone so quickly. So I'm trying to think of some interesting things for us to do next week. I'm thinking what I might ask you to do is maybe tell me your favourite podcast moments from the last year. Just for fun, really. Yeah, so that's that. I don't think I had to tell you anything else. I must write things down better. Anyway, I've managed to ramble on the, this is going to be short because I've got nothing to tell you, for a whole half an hour now. And I don't even know if any of you are left. You've probably long gone or fallen asleep. But for those of you that are left, I shall, as promised, give you a little look at the garden minus the shed. Oh, apologies, I'm trying to hold you still. So you can see there's a gap next to the little grey shed where there's a bench. On the gravel there is where the other shed stood. So after, I think it was 4 years of it being there, it's actually rather nice to be able to see the whole garden. And he did work hard. He built his little workshop at the bottom. He built that single-handedly, laid the concrete base, built it, and he did it all by himself. He had some help, because what it is it's an old garage that was taken down. I'm going to try and balance you, hang on. That's not very good. Can I balance you there? That's better. Yeah, it was an old shed belonging, old garage belonging to one of our neighbours, and it's all like prefab concrete blocks. So he and Peter and Lauren and Ewan took it all down about 4 years ago, and it laid around the garden. We couldn't use the garden. It was just such a mess. It was like a building site. And now, last year during lockdown, he built his shed. The year before, he laid the concrete base because he had to dig it out. I don't know if you can tell, but the garden's on quite a slope. So he had to dig it all out level. That took quite some doing. And then he laid a concrete base and he built his shed. But he had to, it's smaller than a garage. So he had to cut it all down. It was very clever. I'm very proud of him. Bearing in mind, he's a shop manager for hi-fi and sort of home cinema stuff, not a builder. He's done a very good job. So, so that really is everything now. I've thoroughly bored you and I'm going to go away and leave you alone and try and do a bit more knitting. So I've got something a little bit more exciting to show you next week. As it is an anniversary, there might even be cake. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. Sorry I didn't have more to show you. And I will see you next week. In the meantime, happy knitting.